Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about Dragon's Dogma 2. As you are no doubt aware, this is hands down one of the games that I'm the most excited for in 2024. And a little bit earlier today, I was just catching up on all of the IGN First coverage that they've been putting up in regards to Dragon's Dogma 2 since Capcom decided to partner with them in order to provide them with exclusive access to, interviews as well as gameplay footage and all of that stuff. Naturally, that is where we're going to be finding some of the newer stuff. So yesterday, I actually noticed that there was an article being put up about Dragon's Dogma 2 director explaining why less fast travel can be a good thing. And this is actually something that excites me a lot because I've said multiple times, I do not think that just adding fast travel into an open world game is the best thing to do. And the reasoning behind that is because, you add fast travel into the game, sure, players can get to where they want to faster, but at the same time, that open world becomes a little bit smaller. The important thing is making the traversal of that world enjoyable, whether that is through events or through dynamic traversal methods like I've spoken about in the past, or any other number of things. So there's a wide variety of things that you can do to ensure that an open world game can be fun without necessarily just telling players, oh yeah, just warp over here, do this, warp over there, do that, because that just makes the world feel smaller. And in my opinion, in a lot of ways, it actually defeats the purpose of the game being an open world. Now, understand there's going to be a lot of different opinions when it comes to this stuff. I'm not saying that the way I look at things is the most correct one. I'm just providing you with my personal opinion when it comes to these types of situations. Now, before we jump into the specific open world article there, I also watched the video from IGN where they were interviewing the director Hideaki Itsuno on the topic of Dragon's Dogma 2 pawns. So there were a couple of choice quotes that I picked up here. We have the first one. We've done whatever we can to keep pawns from repeating the same lines multiple times. So yes, if you guys remember, wolves hunt in packs arisen. It's weak to fire. That type of stuff seems like they're trying to, at least put a bit of a damper on the meme. So pawns are going to be repeating themselves a little bit less often than what we're accustomed to. Now, another thing that they're talking about is they want pawns to feel like you have a friend who's played through the game and he's giving you hints as to how to proceed. Now, this is already something that they did in the original Dragon's Dogma. However, in my opinion, it was maybe a little bit too overt because in Dragon's Dogma, the original one, the idea was if a pawn goes out into a quest, so if another player was to take my main pawn, which you could make your main pawn available publicly, if another player was to take him on a quest, that pawn would be aware of how things work for that quest. So if I'm doing the same quest, the pawn will go like, oh, that thing is weak to lightning. We should hit it with lightning. Or, oh, we need to go this way. I know exactly where we got to go. Just go this way. Trust me, bro. I got this. So the pawn would give you a lot of guidance in your quests. Now, I'm hoping that this is maybe a toggleable feature that we can choose exactly how much the pawn reveals, but they want the pawns in Dragon's Dogma 2 to act kind of like your guide into the world itself. So one of the things that they've also mentioned is we wanted to avoid putting too many markers and such on screen. I think this is a good thing. I think this is a very good thing. I like simplistic AIs. And I know that people are going to be quick to point out different games that I play. Look, I like different games for different reasons. Sometimes in certain games, I'll have a cluttered ass AI. It's not going to bother me too much. But there are other games where I want to be entirely immersed, and having a more minimal AI is much preferable. But even more important than putting markers on screen, one of the things that I would actually like to avoid much more is just having a ton of markers on your map. The traditional Ubisoft experience where you jump up on a tower reveals the map, and suddenly it's like, hey, here's 50 meaningless tasks for you to do in our open world. You can go do them now. They're completely devoid of any real meaningful interactions with the game, and they're just there to kind of pad out the gameplay time, but hey, you can go do them if you want. Ubisoft games tend to do that type of stuff a lot. So I actually am hoping that Dragon's Dogma 2 doesn't fall in that trap and that most of the events available on the map will be meaningful interactions. But avoiding putting those markers on there and using your pawns for guidance is actually a more interesting way of doing things, because even though, there are going to be guides and all of that stuff throughout the internet, because that is always the case. Let's just be completely real about that. There's always going to be like your Fextra Life and your wikis and all of that tell you exactly how to do every single quest in the game. The idea that the developers have for this game, and the idea that I hope that a lot of players, pursue for this game, is the community exploration. And what do I mean by this? I mean that imagine that we just do stuff based around the knowledge of other players' pawns as opposed to looking stuff up online. And again, if you want to look stuff up online, look, it's your video game. You do whatever the hell you want with it. I'm just providing you with my thoughts and my suggestion, right? Instead of looking up stuff online, just pick up pawns and see where the pawns take you. See where the guidance of the pawns take you. Guidance which will hopefully be obtained organically by other players, right? Because that's the whole point. Like Hideaki Itsuno says, it's like having a friend there guiding you in an enjoyable way. Before this line, he also said it's like that friend has already finished the game and is just providing you with a couple of tips for stuff that he wants you to experience. We didn't want to ruin the atmosphere by making it look too much like a game. Again, that's all good to me. Pawns in the previous games did each have their own personalities. So this indicates that they're simplifying the personality thing a little bit. While it would be nice for there to be an infinite number of personalities, we've split personalities into a number of easily understood elements, which should make it easier for players to pick pawns based on their expectations of what they'll do. So to me, the changes in pawns are interesting. I'll be curious to see exactly how the pawn personality works. If it's still one of those situations where if you send a pawn out, like if you keep sending them out, they become a little bit more aggressive. If you keep sending them towards you, they become a little bit more passive and more defensive. Like there was all of those types of influences that you were able to do to your pawn. And I'm hoping that there are maybe a little bit more refined tools for training your pawn properly. Because in Dragon's Dogma 1, you know, you'd get to a point in the game where it's like, well, it's just better if I grab a couple of crystals and just give him the potion that will give him the exact personality that I want. So, you know, I'm hoping that there are more useful personalities and less personalities that aren't very good, which was one of the problems of the original. But overall, I'll be very curious to see how pawns operate, but I do like the idea of people, rather than just looking stuff up online, just, you know, bring a new pawn, see if that pawn knows how this quest works in case you're struggling to figure it out, and try to basically navigate the world of the game using the pawns as opposed to using third-party websites. Now, getting back to the article here, Dragon's Dogma 2 director explains why less fast travel can be a good thing. And the quote they have here is, "Travel is boring. It's only an issue because your game is boring." Yes! Having said that, though, traveling on the original Dragon's Dogma could sometimes be a little bit boring, particularly with the way that you would eventually lose out on stamina, and it would be a pain in the ass to get that stamina back up. You would lose out on health, be a pain in the ass to get that health back up as well. So, you know, traveling in the original Dragon's Dogma was meaningful, but at the same time, a lot of times it was a very lengthy process and it didn't always have fun interactions along the way. Sometimes it did, but not always. I do remember there being large stretches of open world where I would just be traveling and be like, oh my God, are we there yet? Again, I still love the original Dragon's Dogma. I think it's a unique game, but that was one of its flaws, if we're being completely honest. So let's go over the article here by Kat Bailey. Fast travel is a contentious issue within open-world games. Make it too easy and you risk trivializing the world. Make it too hard and players may find traveling tedious. Weighing in on the debate, Dragon's Dogma 2 director Hideaki Itsuno explained why he is keen to avoid the former, that being he is keen to avoid trivializing the world by implementing too much fast travel, preferring that players travel normally and experience the world around them. Just give it a try. Travel is boring? That's not true. It's only an issue because your game is boring. All you have to do is make travel fun. That's why you place things on the right location for players to discover, or come up with enemy appearance methods that create different experiences each time, or force players into blind situations where they don't know whether it's safe in 10 or not in 10 meters in front of them. And this is actually one of the first scenarios that you will usually come across when it comes to the original Dragon's Dogma, because if you go out and you're trying to do like one of the quests that requires you to go to, I always remember that this is a quest that requires you to go to a fort, then by the time you leave that specific fort, it's going to be nighttime, you're going to be surrounded by goblins, and nighttime in Dragon's Dogma is nighttime. It's not like in a lot of other games where it's just like, well, it's a little bit darker, but I can see everything fine. No, you can't see crap unless you have your lantern and you have oil. Okay? That's the way that nighttime works in Dragon's Dogma. And that's what he's saying when he's talking about, oh, maybe the players can't see 10 feet in front of them, and that makes things a little bit more tense. And that was definitely a tense encounter that first time that you're left outside that fort and there's a bunch of goblins everywhere and you're scared of like aggroing something maybe a little bit more vicious than the goblins, because near those goblins, if I remember correctly, there was also a friggin' drake that you could aggro at nighttime because you couldn't see crap even with your lantern. So yes, things could get very tense, and that did make that particular trek very interesting. It also makes it much more meaningful when you discover things like shortcuts and you're like, oh, actually, in order to get to this location, I'm now able to go this way, which is something that they can do in an open world as well. Now, he says here, we've put a lot of work into designing a game where you can stumble across someone and something will happen. So while it's fine if it does have fast travel, we decided to design the kind of map where players will make the decision for themselves to travel by bike or in foot in order to enjoy the journey. I'm not sure if they meant by bike. They probably mean by the carts, because there's going to be ox carts that you're going to be able to take. I'm not sure what they mean by bike. There's not bikes in the world of Dragon's Dogma as far as I'm aware. But yeah, most definitely, I think that fast travel does need to be a player choice. And I'm not just talking about fast travel. I mean, traveling as a whole needs to be a player choice, how you choose to traverse the map. That needs to be a choice that you make, and it needs to be interesting while you are traversing a trap. Because, again, if you have an open world and you're just constantly fast traveling all over the place, is it really an open world game? Right? Because you're just fast traveling everywhere. Who cares, right? Anyway, Dragon's Dogma 2 and its predecessor are unique in that they don't allow unrestricted fast travel. Technically speaking, with the introduction of Dark Arisen, it's almost like you have unrestricted fast travel if you know what you're doing, using the Eternal Fairy Stone and all of that stuff. Both games require expensive and rare fairy stones to teleport to designated port crystals. You can also place them in the ground, and that allows you to teleport to different locations. And, you know, if you buy Dark Arisen, you get the Eternal Fairy Stone. So, yeah. Dragon's Dogma 2 also adds ox carts that allow travel only along specific paths, with the caveat that you may be ambushed along those routes. In adding the ox carts, Itsuno says the goal wasn't to make a simple method of safe transportation. Instead, he sees it as an additive way to build out Dragon Dogma's 2 world. Now, the thing here is, to me, is that you can also make those ox carts be quests. Let's say that, you know, you're traveling with the merchants, you're using their ox carts, they get attacked, and now you have a chance to potentially defeat whatever enemies they are fighting. And as you defeat those enemies, maybe the ox cart dude actually rewards you for the service that you've provided in ensuring that they reach their destination safely. Maybe it even opens up a side quest. Maybe the monster that shows up can go like, oh my god, we didn't know that these monsters were now roosting in this particular location. We should take care of this. We need to report this back when we get to town. Then you get to town and they give you a mission on the mission board to go take out the dudes that attacked that ox cart, and maybe you can have additional rewards for that. I'm talking about, you know, gameplay that is just, I don't want to just use the term dynamic gameplay, but that's kind of like what it is. Make certain quest lines only possible when they happen, when you encounter those things dynamically in the world. And you're like, well, what if I don't take the ox carts? How do I get that quest? Well, maybe you're traveling the world and you encounter an ox cart, which we've already seen that can happen in the gameplay of Dragon's Dogma 2. And that ox cart gets attacked while you just happen to be traversing that specific region, and you can get the exact same quest or even a different one or something along those lines. The purpose is make it so that traveling is interesting. While riding one, he's referring to the ox cart, you might find the path blocked by goblins and have no choice but to get off and join the battle. Then, as you do, a griffin might swoop in and destroy the entire cart with one blow, forcing you to walk the rest of the way while cursing its name. See, that's an interesting thing. A lot of players, and this kind of like plays into some of the things that I've been talking about in regards to the amount of convenience that we've been getting in games like Monster Hunter. There's just so much convenience nowadays. There's almost no inconvenience. A scenario like the one he's talking about, where a griffin swoops in, destroys your cart, now you have to walk the rest of the way. It is going to be inconvenient. It might even be frustrating for a lot of you. I understand, okay? I understand, because I know that a lot of people, they want their gameplay experience to be, no, I want to be efficient with my time. I want to do things in a timely manner. Maybe this might not be the game for you if you're one of those people that are super worried about efficiency and making sure that you get as much progress as possible within your 30-minute time session and whatnot. I understand. But do understand that for a lot of us, that level of immersiveness is actually kind of cool. And those encounters where a griffin swoops in and smashes the cart and inconveniences you in a major way is memorable. Like I always say in my old Monster Hunter examples, like I always remember that there were quests where I would run out of potions in those quests and there was no restock. So I'd have to run around the map picking up herbs and honey and, transforming those into mega potions and using that stuff. I find that stuff to be interesting. I find those inconveniences to be enjoyable, and that is what I like. And as it seems, that appears to be the same design direction that Hideaki Itsunu wants to go in, and therefore, just be warned that if that stuff happens, it is what it is. I just think it's cool. But none of that has been set up by us in advance. Instead, griffins naturally have an inclination towards attacking cows if they discover as they move, and these pieces all just happen to work together to naturally create the situation. So yes, an ox cart ride in this world may be cheap, but a lot can come as a result of that cheapness. I think it's the kind of world we've managed to create. Kento Kinoshita, who was a key developer of the original Dragon's Dogma, throws out a few more examples designed to reveal how reactive the sequel's world can be. Say you were trying to cross a bridge, but some goblin went and destroyed it. So then you decide to walk along a different path, only to run into a peddler who's on some task you can buy from... What? Who's on some task who you can buy from or save, or has a camp where you can regroup. When I say the game gives you players a lot... Okay, so I'm assuming this is like a wide variety of different events that can happen. But yeah, you guys get the idea. Their idea is like, as you are inconvenienced, maybe you'll have to circumvent the problem a certain way, and maybe that'll lead to different and interesting scenarios. Which again, is exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to the dynamic aspect of traveling the world. And I know for a fact, because I look at my comment section, I'm very much in tune to what people think. I know that there's a lot of people that are going to just think, this is just an inconvenience. I don't want that in my video game. I want you to be aware. This is the way that they're designing the game, and this is something that I'm excited about. I want to be inconvenienced. I want to see what happens. I want them to destroy bridges, and I hope that I have to do some kind of quest in order to repair the bridge. And while I don't do that quest, that is going to be an inconvenience in my playthrough because I'm not going to be able to navigate it, because those things feel organic and interesting, okay? That's just my opinion. Feel free to disagree. It's fine. Fast travel has been criticized in other games for essentially turning open worlds into a series of loading screens. True! And as a result, some games have sought to approach the feature differently or even do away with it entirely, only to bring it back for a sequel. Itsuno does say that he ultimately likes fast travel as a feature, saying it's convenient and good. However, he also feels that distance is an important part of Dragon's Dogma 2, which is why the team ultimately opted to restrict fast travel. Kinoshita adds, I guess we wanted there to be a cost to shortening a long distance in a way that strongly mirrors the real world too. There are a lot of rules in real life that are needed to make a system possible, and ignoring those rules makes things seem less realistic or less valuable. Personally, this is something that I'm much more excited for. I'm curious to hear from you guys. How do you guys feel about the open world of Dragon's Dogma 2 up until this point? Let me know in the comments section down below if you agree with this particular approach or disagree with the approach. Are you more excited or less excited? And as usual, if you guys enjoy the content, do hit that like button, subscribe, bell notification icon, all of that jazz for more Dragon's Dogma 2, as well as some of the other games that I'm going to be covering, like Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Rise of the Ronin at some point. There's so many fantastic games this year. Personally, I cannot wait. So, subscribe, bell notification icon, all that jazz. That is going to be it for now. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe. Peace out.